How's my audio?
Yeah, you sound good. Sounding beautiful, suave.
Yeah. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Radiator Arms, voted number 3 best podcast by the Dalai Lama. All right, gentlemen, if you don't mind, I'm going to do something a little bit out of character today and open by talking about myself.
No.
What?
I know.
Never.
I know.
You hardly
Shock
ever.
horror. Yeah. And before I do, let's give the proper introduction. So, hello, everybody. My name is James, better known to some as JayEmm on Cars, or who's that bloody bloke on the telly? I'm bored of listening to him. To my right, we have the man in the cans, our mixer, former Maestro owner, and now Mercedes man. It's Will the Plank.
Hello, everybody.
And to the left, if it's hard, stiff, and low, he'll love it. And his cars are the same as well. It's Ant.
Hello. From Sports and Touring and co-founder of JayEmm and Friends, as it so happens.
Yeah. Now, gents, last night I did something unusual,
Okay.
which is that as a bloke, I thought I might have had a bit of a problem and I decided to do something about it. Now, I know normally we wouldn't talk about these sorts of things, but basically the short version is, you guys both know what happened. The short version is, I thought I was maybe suffering from some description of medical malady that didn't seem to really be particularly urgent, but maybe also could have been something a bit more sinister. And I do have some family histories of certain things. And so I decided to do what very few men actually ever do and take the advice we would give to everybody else, but never take for ourselves, and call 111, ask for some advice, and they said, go off to the hospital. Where happily I spent 4 hours, was seen, tended to, and then told to get out of the way, never darken their doorstep again, and stop being a blight on society and the taxpayer. But I thought that this was important to mention because there may be people out there listening who've maybe been just sort of, thinking about something for a little while, or something's been bugging them or whatever, but it's a very, very blokey thing to do to not seek some help and assistance. And I tell you what, I was annoyed, I was frustrated, I was overly warm, and I'm pretty sure I felt worse about the fact that I was sat in a hospital for 4 hours than what was actually ever wrong with me, which was nothing at all. But I had a fantastic night's sleep afterwards because I went home with some peace of mind, and I knew that no, nothing bad is actually wrong with me at all. And, I got that sorted. So, gentlemen, if you are out there and you are listening and there is something going on, be it physical, mental, emotional, whatever, and it's been bothering you, do yourself a favor. Just get it checked out. It's always worth it.
I can't agree with you anymore because I'm at an age now where I want to live to spite people. So it's perfectly reasonable to make sure your health is in good shape, not for you, but for the suffering of others.
Well, quite. And you know what, Will? This little admission of mine is inspired by your candidacy in previous episodes. And I know you've talked about some of the stuff that you've had to deal with, and I feel it's only fair that I share. So, next week it's your turn to be broken.
I'm broken right now. Right now, my knee is not good. Last time it was my back, now it's my knee. It's just the old age is moving from joint to joint.
Like a travelling salesman of suffering.
Yeah, basically.
I do wonder, hanging around with you two, if I've squandered my youth up until now, Just, it's because we're all so old and we're all so broken, and I wonder what happened. I'm 34 now, and now I'm falling apart. But I'm in good company, apparently.
You were a rock star. Hey, it's fine. It's absolutely fine, mate. Look, if this was the Middle Ages, we'd all be basically elderly folks. So,
yeah, that's fair. We weren't meant to live this long, but here we are.
Thwarting nature's best plans.
And I think a certain somebody deserves a shout out. That's James's mum.
Yeah.
who was a hero yesterday.
Yeah, thanks, Mum, for taking me into the hospital, because it did seem, given what was going on, that I probably shouldn't have driven myself. But yeah, no, mums are great, and I'm very lucky to have both family and friends to rely upon. I know Ant would have been there had I summoned him, but that would have felt particularly cruel and unusual. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that they found that you were well
I am.
physically, and that I think what it says is that, James, you might be working too hard, and you need to give yourself a little bit of a little bit of space in your life.
He won't do that.
No, I am doing that.
Oh,
I am doing that.
yes?
Yeah, because I've got like the next. I think actually, do you know what? This sounds really silly, right? I think part of why I got so worked up is because I had what I think it was just a bit of anxiety, right? It's 2025. I think I don't trust anybody out there that says they don't occasionally get anxiety. And I got so worried, like, oh my God, what if I'm ill? I've got all these trips booked. I'm going to ruin everything for everybody. And then that makes you feel worse about everything, all right? Stuff that, right? Because, this very week, in fact, I think when this podcast goes out, I will be in Europe with Ben the Sparkle, who is presently hard at work in the cleaning mines, working today on both the Gallardo and also the Scuderia, ahead of a little bit of filming with those tomorrow. We got a good friend of ours coming up with his lovely white Speziale, so that's going to be good fun. So we'll talk about that in a future episode.
I'm going to get to drive that.
Yeah, that's going to be good. Will has also had his first go in a Ferrari, but we're going to get you some more seat time before we talk about that in a future episode. But that was good fun. We did that off camera because you don't want to drive a Ferrari for the first time on camera. But yeah, Ben's doing that, getting things sorted. So yeah, he's hard at work. The weather is nice, and gentlemen, I'm feeling good.
Excellent.
So let's get this episode on the road. And today we're having a little bit of fun. We are doing that classic game of, well, if I were making Top Gear. Previously, we spent a whole episode talking about what is, I think, most people's favourite car show. And today we're going to be pretending that the BBC or an other broadcasting enterprise has approached us and said, lads, we love what you do, and we'd like to give you an budget to produce a 1-hour motoring themed show that we can then broadcast Top Gear style. But I am going to put some of my film school expertise to use here, mostly the TV bit that we did for a few weeks, and say that we are going to have to be careful, because we are going to need to make sure that the lawyers for both Top Gear and Amazon on the Grand Tour are not going to be upset with our plans. We're going to be very careful to not copy anything that they do. And I don't want us to do like the Aldi version of Top Gear. I don't want to be doing like the star in the modestly priced car.
So do you mean you don't want to be doing fifth gear then?
Yeah, well, the story of Fifth Gear is interesting because Fifth Gear is actually the format of original Top Gear, which got sold to them, but without the name. And then you can understand their frustration when Top Gear then got revived. And part of the reason Top Gear got revived with the format that it had is as a way of them being able to continue making the show without them being sued by the people they just sold their idea to. And just in case you're confused by all of this sort of stuff, just about any TV show that you've watched, any reality show, game show, something like that, at the end credits, you'll see a production company, something like Endemol. That's a really big one. And they have what is effectively an IP. And you'll find that more often than not, this show that you might think is like a British institution or an American classic or whatever is very often played around the world in various different guises. Sometimes you know about it. You got Pop Idol and stuff like that, and X Factor and different things. But also you have, Dancing with the Stars in the USA is then Strictly Come Dancing here or something like that. So it's the same format, the same show, sold to different markets.
Yeah, in fact, for the BBC shows, often they have what's called a commissioner, and they're the ones that commission the shows. And that once it's commissioned, that's really just saying we're going to set aside money for this to be made, and it's usually outsourced to an external production company.
So, gents, I've spoken enough. Now, to get us rolling, what I'd like from you is a little bit of inspiration first. So we all know about Top Gear. We all know the format, right? We all know how that runs. But what are the other motoring shows that you found yourself drawn to over the years?
Well, I've got to go with the one I was just taking the mick out slightly. It was Fifth Gear. I absolutely loved Fifth Gear when I was growing up. And much like I loved the original one of Top Gear when I was growing up. Other motoring-based stuff, actually I enjoy the stuff that's a bit more mechanical. Wheeler Dealers, huge fan of that. That was a massive inspiration to me. Even Scrap Heap Challenge, because I consider that a bit of a car show, if I'm honest.
No, Scrap Heap Challenge, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And what other things? I used to like in about a decade ago. I used to like that kind of the Fast and Loud and was it Gas Monkey Garage? All the ones where we're going to lose the shop if we don't make this build. That kind of stuff. It's all absolute cheese in that regard, but still very entertaining. There's some Canadian shows. Is it Rust Valley Cars or something like that? They do a similar kind of thing.
Rust Valley Riches or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. That is on Netflix. I've seen a bit of that. That's quite good. Oh my goodness! There was what was the one with Fuzz Townsend in it?
Car SOS.
Car SOS. Yes,
I love a bit of car sausage.
Yeah. What was that? The show that Professor Tomato was on, or was that a different one?
No, that was on Flippin' Bangers.
Flippin' Bangers. Yeah. I've never watched that actually. I need to watch that because I need to see the origins.
Yeah. I believe the episode is online, and you can watch it, and then I'll tell you the actual story of the car.
I look forward to that. Well, actually, do you know what? This is a good little bit of insight to behind kind of like the shows and TV world. So, what kind of things could he quickly run us down that happened and maybe might be different?
Well, the biggest thing that irked me with the show, the premise of that one, in case you're not familiar, is they would do almost the wheeler dealers bit. So buy a car, try and tidy it up a little bit, sell it for a profit. Except they decided to set themselves a budget of something like 500 quid to buy the car and like 500 quid to do it up, which is just not enough money. And of course, like all TV things, they just totally and completely ignore all of the labor expenses and everything else. But with my BX, which genuinely did live in a field for about 15 years, that is not TV magic. It really did sit in a field. They said it was a low mileage, one owner car. Now, the low mileage bit is true, but the one owner bit isn't. And it frustrates me so much because when they say it on screen, they are holding in their hands the paperwork that I also have, which includes in there an invoice for when the car was sold in 1996. And this was a 1990 car. So even if it only had one other owner, it was still at least a two-owner car. And they made such a big point of labouring this whole one-owner car bit. You're like, but you held in your hands the proof that it wasn't. But, I guess they'd said it once and they just decided to stick with it.
Maybe they meant it's only owned by one person currently.
Yeah, and they also didn't really do that much to it. Like, there's a little thing in them called the Octopus, and they did like half of it. But yeah, for 500 quid, what are you going to do to a car for 500 quid? I don't know. Like, it was a very, very half-baked job.
Now, that sounds like a great challenge for a TV show. What can you do to a car with 500 quid?
Ooh.
There we go.
Modifications. Get it cleaned. Yeah, probably.
Oh, no. Well, Ben the Sparkle's not that expensive. Sorry. Ben the Sparkle. Yeah. But I think shows I've watched, it was mainly Top Gear in the oldie days. I remember watching it with Noel
black
Edmonds.
and white.
Well, yeah. I don't actually remember watching it in black and white. I'm pretty sure I remember Angela Rippon on it.
Yeah.
And Noel Edmonds. And
Angela, I believe, was the first person to present a segment.
Yep, she was.
Yeah.
And then I suppose there wasn't really much else going on for quite a while until Pimp My Ride came along.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, so I used to watch that. I actually got quite intrigued by West Coast Customs off the back of the Pimp My Ride. I think there was the version with West Coast Customs and there was another one that's with another company. I think Exhibit was the main person throughout. It was really, really upsetting to find out later that a lot of it was either fake or they'd present the car and then they'd be like, right, now we're going to take all the stuff back out of the car again because it's too expensive. We can't actually give it to you. So to make it look like they gave people these cars with these banging sound systems and ridiculous screens and wheels and body kits. Sometimes the wheels were taken back. And
the cars were never mechanically sorted, were
no,
they? Like,
never.
ever.
They were absolute bangers.
Yeah, because they're like, what have you got? It's a death trap. You've now got a death trap with a stereo.
I'm going to blow your minds.
I'm glad you finished that sentence.
I actually do have a Pimp My Ride story, which happened to me.
Let's hear it.
No way.
So, I don't know if you remember the Apple 2000 Maestro. Of course you remember that. As I was first kind of sharing that car around on Instagram and TikTok back in the day, I had a talent scout from the company that was doing the reboot of Pimp My Ride that happened in the UK a couple of years ago.
The one sponsored by eBay or whatever
Something
it was.
like that.
Yeah.
And they wanted to pimp my Maestro.
No.
They wanted me to come down. They wanted me to do the car up. Oh, they wanted to do it all up and do all these things to it. But at the time, I was like, you know what? It'd be so sacrilege to do that to this car. And having known what would have happened to the vehicle and the state it would be in, I'll be like, it'd be far worse than it was than when I got it. So I said, what kind of things did you want to do? They said, well, obviously we want to put big wheels on it. We want to lower it all the way down. We want to redo the interior. What kind of things did I talk about? I said, I like music, obviously. You know, I'm into computers and technology and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, maybe we could do like a music themed car and we could like put guitars on like headlining and stuff like that. And I'm like, mate, no. I mean, one of my friends was saying I should do it just because it would be like this most hilarious thing to sell on eBay afterwards. But I didn't want to ruin my perfectly working, albeit a bit rusty, Maestro.
Yeah.
A bit.
A bit. Heavily correct. It was more underseal than car.
Yeah. I would actually like to have seen that in a sort, knowing that the car was not long for this world anyway.
Yes, had I known that was what was going on, and had I known there was another one coming around, I would have gone, do you know what?
I mean, think of the views. You could have had the world's first donked Austin Maestro.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm glad I didn't, because what also went around TikTok, there was one of the girls on the show, I think, had a Fiat 500 or something, and I think they did it up, and then it ended up leaking. The car was damp inside and unusable. They basically, as they did, ruined the car.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those where I thought, I'm trying to save this thing. It doesn't need like that, because they said, oh, you can have a bit of input on the mods. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that. So we wouldn't have a TV show. I said, well, sorry, that's kind of
To be fair,
but
though,
no thanks.
the title of it is Pimp My Ride, not, tastefully improve my vehicle with the select custom modifications.
Well, yes, it is obvious that, but that's my Pimp My Ride story. In hindsight, maybe I should have done it, but to be honest, I'm still glad I didn't.
As one of my few automotive regrets is I every now and again I look to see if it's still for sale somewhere, but a few years back on eBay, for the princely sum of about 1,500 quid, was a car that had been featured on Polish Pimp My Ride.
Oh, God.
And it was done up with lots of different Polish motifs and things. And evidently they had Pepsi Max as a sponsor for the show. And I want to say it was like an old Golf or something like that. It was a hatchback of some description. And they had like a Pepsi Max fridge in the back and, big sound system and everything. So the back seats were gone. And I quite like a bit of Pepsi Max. It's generally my poison of choice.
Same.
And I was just like, for 1,500 quid, it was a left hooker, but you're like, yeah, whatever. And I thought, oh, I really want to do that. But at the time, I just didn't have that amount of money to buy on something really silly. Now I'd be like, if that car comes up, I'm like, I just want to do it. Because can you imagine turning up someone being like, what do you drive? I'd be like, I drive the Golf from Poland's Pimp My Ride. You must remember it.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That's like Tavares, he got the Pimp My Ride minivan, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a heck of a story.
Did either of you see the Fiat Multiplier that Hubnut had?
No.
I don't think I did.
Hubnut bought a Fiat Multiplier that I'm pretty sure, could be wrong here, had been customized by Soccer AM. So it was, I'm fairly sure it was like lurid pink. And then inside it was like, I don't think it was artificial grass, but it was like green effectively inside, like long green fabric inside, I think meant to look like turf. And the windscreen wiper at the back they'd done it up so it looked like somebody kicking a ball when the windscreen wiper was
God.
on. And it was so hideous. I loved it. I mean, they took a multiplier and they actually made it worse. It was the best thing I've ever seen.
You're forgetting the Rover James.
Oh, yes, that was fantastic too. There's actually a swear in that episode that when they did, because they do a little bit talking about how like they dislike modern cars because they're rubbish and everything, and they got sat-nav systems and that. Well, I was rewatching some old Top Gear some time ago, and in the, you hear something and you're like, did he just say what I thought he said? Well, in the BBC broadcast, they bleeped it. But when they put it on Netflix, they either didn't care or they forgot. So just in the middle of this episode, Clarkson drops the F-bomb. And I was like, what? What? Like, this... What? Like, this is BBC. How dare you? Like, clearly they'd intended to beep it, but evidently that was something they put on and Netflix didn't. So just in the middle of this random episode of Top Gear, it's just one swear out of nowhere. And I was like, yeah, okay. It took me ages to find it again. It's like, did I dream that? Like, no, I didn't.
But going back to the Pimp My Ride thing briefly, there's an idea for a segment on the show. Modded or murdered.
Ooh.
So,
Ooh.
Where you judge people's cars, is it modded, which means it's nice, or has it been murdered, as in it's been a bad thing been done to it? Although that might mean that it's got all black tinted out everything. So maybe we'll come up with a different name, but something along those lines.
Oh, do you know what would be quite good? Is if you could combine this, because you just do the Pimp My Ride thing again. Like, again, this is too close to just Pimp My Ride. Right now, I think the format itself is loose enough. Like, we improve somebody's car for them. Like, Pimp My Ride don't really own that. We can't call it Pimp My Ride. But I think what would be more interesting is you get somebody bring you a car, and we could do basically automotive blind date, where you're like, we've brought you 3 car customizers, and they are going to be sent off to rework your car. But they're not allowed to tell you what they're actually going to do. Ooh. You can ask them about it, but they can only give you the ethos of their work. They can only give you their style. So they're like, here's my Apple 2000 Maestro. Customizer number 1. How would you respect this British beauty? And they'll be like, we want to make it roar like a lion and stand proud amongst the people of Britain. Some nonsense like that, right? I mean, you basically, you got to choose. You want one person to be like, I want it to be a dark warrior, a king of the night, a hero of the Autobahn, and then basically you'd be like, you're going to have to commit, and you give that person your car, and you'd be like, yep, okay, there you go, off you go. Like, and one of these people might not actually have any experience modifying cars.
Oh.
Yeah. So that could definitely be an irregular segment, I think. I don't think you could do that every week.
No.
But you could definitely do it. Or what you could do is that could be a series-long thing where you go, okay, at the start of the series somewhere, you do that, and then you revisit it.
Yeah, follow that car's build through the series.
Yeah, and then eventually the big reveal would be like, and Kevin, here is your Astra. Like, and then,
I like that idea. I like the idea of it remaining a thread throughout each episode.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you tease people, be like, right, we've gone off to this factory. It's the only place in Britain that can make 92-inch wheels. Like, some people would say that wooden wheels on an Audi A4 is insane, but Brian begs to differ. I can do the segments.
Oh, crikey. What about actual automotive dating? Right, doing the similar thing like that, but like
trying to breed cars?
No, like a matchmaking thing based on people's cars. So the person would actually go and choose who they wanted to go on a date with based on the car that the other person has.
I'm glad you said that, because I did see a Channel 4 documentary once about people who have an inappropriate relationship with their cars.
Yeah.
And I'm let's not go there. So that's good.
That's not that guy who had that car called Chase, was it?
I don't remember.
The internet knows.
I blocked it out.
I don't want to know.
No.
I wish I could forget. I wish I could forget. Anyway, moving on.
Choosing someone to date based on what
Yeah.
car they drive. I mean, do you know what though? I mean, that would be an interesting one because I had an experience on my way here in the Lamborghini this morning. Where I was getting the stares and a bit of a smile, and if you know what I mean, from somebody. So you know,
The teeth didn't fall out, did they?
no, definitely not. Certain cars, let's just say, can say certain things about both the person who drives them and the person that chooses to date that person. So I think you'd have to have the cars would have to be in some way comparable.
No. I've got it. So this would not open us up to potentially terrible things happening. We can call it matchmaker, right? And person plays it for some description of prize. But what you got to do, we got 10 people, 10 cars. You've got to match the owner to the car.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. And best over the series gets an prize.
Yep. I like that one.
Yeah. I don't think I've actually really seen that played all that often, but it's a bit like, do people look like their pets or do pets look like their owners? Because sometimes cars definitely do.
Yeah.
I know this might be hard because, obviously you guys know me now, but I think it'd be fun. Like, if we never knew what cars each other drove, what car do you think that I'd drive based on what you know about me?
Probably a Vauxhall Zafira.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's a low blow. I was going to say with the sunglasses and the shirt there, you look like an old M3 driver.
Oh,
yeah.
He literally is.
Really below the belt. Yeah. I am a former M3
truth
driver.
hurts. I was going to say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would not be able to guess. I don't really know. Because I know people who have such a different range of cars. Like James has got everything from Professor Tomato through to an F12 and everything in between. So you couldn't say, what car does he drive?
No, it's just what car of a person, like the initial. This is based purely on reading the book's cover. What
Personally,
judgment?
I think with you, I look at you here. I mean, ignore the Meowdy partner shirt, right?
and the cat tattoo.
Yeah, I think what's missing here, because you got the glasses, you got the kind of like scraggly beard, but quite tidy up top. I think what's missing is the pipe. And maybe the set of Saab keys dangling.
Oh, yes.
Do you know what? I could go for a Saab. I like a Saab.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I think that would
Saab
really
9000,
fit. Yeah. Like an old, like a slightly vintagey, and you'd be the sort of person where you'd be like, he's maybe slightly too young to have had that from when it was new, but that definitely was his poster car.
Yeah, that was definitely in the family somewhere.
Yeah. You're like his old Uncle Albert's, Saab. That. Yeah.
What about Ant?
Something that's been pimped.
Yeah, the problem is I know him. I actually would have probably said, not knowing much, maybe something more, like American cruiser, like lowrider kind of vibe. But
I was thinking saloon of some sort.
No.
No, open top, like,
okay.
just like,
No.
But yeah, see, it's not like.
Yeah. So the R8 GT Spider was the first convertible I'd ever owned in my life because I just didn't like convertibles.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I just saw that car and I was like, that was the first time I looked at a convertible and I said, actually, no, it was the second time I looked at a convertible and said, I want one of those. The first time was actually a Ferrari 48,
What was 360?
No, the one before that.
355.
The one before that. 348.
Yeah. Oh, we know you've got a weakness for that 348.
Yeah, the 348. And I saw it in an episode of Smallville.
Okay.
Lex Luthor had a black one with a cream interior. And I was like, oh, I like that. And I started looking at how much they were. And at the time, I think they were like 40 grand or something like that, or 35,000 or something crazy in the early 90s. Sorry, early 2000s. Or whenever that was, it was sometime in the 2000s for sure. and yeah, fell in love with it. But apart from that, it's the only time I've ever really fell for a convertible, and I think I could only do a convertible if it's a supercar. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no Ford KA convertible, no street car for you then?
Hell nah.
I saw one of those the other day.
Did you?
I would really like to drive one of them. Yeah, because people always ask me like, oh, have you not like driven all the cars by now? And it's like, no, there are still so many cars out there that you would think you could quite easily find. But the problem is, I think because of the nature of enthusiast cars, I'm more likely to have somebody bring me their, P1 than their street car. But I would love to drive a street car and a sport car. And also, I still
Puma?
haven't-
Have you driven a Puma?
See, this is how strange my life is. Only the racing one,
Huh.
not the regular one.
I saw one of those yesterday. I couldn't believe it.
Tell you what I did drive the other day, though, and I'll admit this, gentlemen, I have fallen in love with it, and I did not think that I would, was a Mark 3.5 Fiesta RS 1800. It was
What? Say that again?
Fiesta RS 1800. So 1994, 95.
Yeah.
Wow.
The last of the sort of more squared looking Fiestas that came out in like 89. I think that body style came out.
Wasn't the first one the XR2i?
Correct. Yeah.
And then the RS 1800 came after
Yeah,
that.
so because they did the XR2i and the RS Turbo.
That was it.
And I think the RS 1800 effectively replaced both of them. And then they did an SI, which was effectively for people that wanted the sporty looking car, but that wasn't actually sporty, because by this point in time they were getting stolen so often it was getting boring.
I was going to say, I could see you in a hoodie down Southend Seafront doing burnouts. But actually, this is a good point talking about the car show.
Yeah.
Because obviously we've got access to like anything, because all the manufacturers, they want to lend it to us. They want their cars to be on TV. We're respectable automotive journalists.
Yeah. Speak for yourselves.
What cars would you say you have to have on the show? Like you have to make segments with? What would be the ones that you need to cover?
Oh,
Koenigsegg,
yeah.
Pagani.
Yeah, the
Especially
hypercar
Zonda.
stuff. Like, yeah. You just got to. But right, you're gonna have to agree with me on this one. I think we need to get Will to drive them.
Yeah.
I think we do.
Yeah.
I think a segment has to be Will drives, and each week we have to put you in something that is just so far out of your comfort zone, and but again, you don't know. So one week it could be a Pagani, but the next week it could be one of those like 500-ton earth movers,
Yeah.
which are equally fascinating. You see, because I think something again that hasn't really been looked at enough, and I think where our car show could differ is there are lots and lots of vehicles that I think a lot of people are interested in, because people do quite like engineering, and like I think most car people that are interested in supercars, race cars, stuff like that, when you see there's pictures of somebody next to one of these big diggers and you're like, your head doesn't even reach the bottom of the wheel, because the thing is so massive, right? Those sorts of things are fascinating. Like I would love to see a segment each week on like, we've found something and it's just a bit of extreme engineering, because I could see you really getting into that. And
I would like to drive a tractor.
yeah,
Like I'd like to that. Maybe even a train, fire engine, all that stuff, an ambulance, all these random things.
There you go.
That general members of the public never drive.
well, trains, I know a guy.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think you do.
I like the idea of the tractor, because what we can do is the way we can introduce that, especially if it's a Lamborghini tractor, is like this week we're going to get Will to drive a Lamborghini. But not the Lamborghini you're thinking of. And then, but I have to insist that we at least take turns introducing these vehicles by actually driving it ourselves, telling people about the car and why we think this will be an interesting experience for Will, because I still want to drive those cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I do really want. I went to the Koenigsegg factory once, and they were on their summer holiday. I was so gutted. Like, I don't normally find myself in Sweden, and where I was going, I drove past a sign that said, like, Ängelholm, 5Ks this way or whatever. And I thought, right, I know what's there. When I come back, I'm going there. This was also my first date with my then new girlfriend. We went over to Sweden,
As you do.
On
On a first date, with a strange man you don't know.
Fun fact,
strange woman
right?
you don't know.
Fun fact for you. So we'd gotten to know each other quite well because we've been talking online. She was living abroad when we first got to know each other. And then we knew that we were going to see each other. And it just so happened that I had my supercharged E92 M3 at the time. And I sold it to a chap who was living in Sweden. And he had a car to Part X. And originally the plan was for him to just work out how do we get the cars shipped, this and the other. And the channel was fairly small at the time. So I just said, look, it's going to cost us, probably $2 or $3 grand at least to get the cars, shipped from A to B and back and whatever. You give me $1 grand, I'll book a ferry and I'll just do it. And I'll make a bit of content and it'll be a bit of fun road trip. So I said to the lady, I said, hey, do you fancy like going over to Sweden with me? What I did not know, apparently, sent her mother into a tiz, is the fact that Sweden apparently is Europe's #1 destination for human trafficking victims. So she's like, hey Mom, I've met this strange man on the internet and he wants to take me to Sweden. And it's like, I didn't know Sweden seems so nice and safe and innocent, but apparently, yeah, this is where people go to if they're basically being sort of like snuck out of the out of Europe.
Rest is history, as
the
they
rest
say.
is history, but it worked out all right in the end.
I was going to say, whatever happened to that girl, we'll never know.
Yes. Well, how do we start this?
I don't know.
So I've got a segment
Go for it.
I'd like to do.
Yeah.
And I have to say one singular small swear word here. So if there's any children, cover your ears.
Yeah.
And I think it could either be old shit or golden hit. And when I take cars that may be strange, old or rubbish and see if they were actually rubbish or if they were any good. And maybe they were the golden hit.
Oh, okay. So, missed opportunities.
Yeah.
Is this just going to be a way for you to try and sneakily drive all the British Leyland stuff?
Yes, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I like the concept. There's a website, I can't remember which one it was, one of the motoring ones, could be Jalopnik or something. And one of the features that they did, I always liked, was called Nice Price or Crack Pipe. And basically it was like cars being advertised, but at what seemed to be like quite optimistic numbers. And basically it was like, community vote here, nice price, or are they smoking crack with this?
Yeah.
So I think maybe with, because we've got to get a bit of jeopardy in here. And I think perhaps the idea is that you would have to, you'd have to make the case for this car. You're going to have to convince people. Maybe we need to find a person that's been somehow wronged by this particular car, and you've got to convince them that actually it is.
That's it. So somebody could write in and say, I've got this XYZ car and it's a bit of scrap and I think it's awful. Prove me otherwise.
Yeah, but you like cars too much.
Yeah.
That's the problem. You can't be cruel. You would not you would not be the sort of vet who the first sign of a bit of a cough will pull a revolver out.
Hang on. Do you not remember when I drove that MG3 and I drove by you while you were filming and said, this is the biggest pile of shit I've ever driven?
Yeah, but that's easy for you to say because it's new and soulless.
I suppose.
Maybe there's an interesting bit here, which is pitting cars against their modern day descendants.
Ooh.
It would be more interesting if you had, for example, some description of old British Leyland thing versus the modern day equivalent. So, go back in time and find a Triumph, something like that, and be like, okay, in some weird sort of way, this MG is about the closest thing you get to it today.
What, the Cyberster?
Actually, that's actually not a bad
there you go.
shout.
Triumph Stag versus MG Cyberster.
Yeah.
And we can set a series of challenges. to put things in the boot or to, do an economy challenge, which would be quite interesting because that'll then be, dirty, hideous old. You'll have to find some, E5 for the Triumph and some, electricity for the Cyberstar.
That reminds me of that economy challenge. What cars was it? It was an M3, wasn't it? That they did.
They've done a few.
And a Prius.
Yeah.
But they were driving
around the track.
Driving around the track
Yeah.
reasonably quickly, but at a pace that was...
Well, the Prius was full tilt, wasn't it?
That
was the point. And it was like watching Formula One. You know, when the old Burt Mylander, isn't it, in the pace car, is like driving the wheels off the thing.
Yeah.
And, the Formula One guys behind are like, checking their watches. And,
just
getting
weaving,
a bit
get some
bored.
heat in the tyres. Oh, that's... Yeah.
I saw somebody trying to get some heat in their tyres in their Saxo the other day driving down the road.
Yeah.
Doing the weave, doing the thing like that before they went for an overtake, the world's slowest overtake.
Oh, wow.
That was the thing I saw.
Brilliant. And
That's
what are you
crazy.
going to present? What are we going to do?
I don't know. I was just kind of enjoying those a bit. I think, I don't know, I'd like to do something to do with like track cars or something like that.
I was thinking I think we need to look into the world of motorsports.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
We've got Stig.
We have Antame Stig.
Yep.
Right. Obviously, he'll need a rebrand. Otherwise, we will get sued.
Yeah.
But I think that we could use our newfound fame and fortune as a way of shining a light on lesser spotted motorsport.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what? Actually, yeah. Yeah. Maybe we could do a thing. Maybe I could compete in like some like really grassroots and oddball.
Some club level sort of.
Yeah.
We need to invent some motorsports as well to go along with this.
Ah, there we go.
I'm thinking the 50cc powered unicycle challenge.
I think
What?
for safety reasons, we should probably film that after the rest of the series is done.
You've got to create something like that. And I think a bunch of petrol powered unicycles going around a track of some sort. And I feel like it's got to be like a dirt bike track almost with jumps and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. One, I'm not getting on a unicycle. And two, I mean, is there such a thing as a powered unicycle?
Yes.
Well, we're going to find out. Engineering section. We're going to build one.
No, there is.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, no, it exists. I've seen people on them. No, they are terrifying. I mean, they look amazing, but they scare the hell out of me. I saw somebody going into town on one once, riding, I don't know what the hell you call it, into Cambridge. So imagine something that's the size of like a unicycle wheel, but looks more sort of briefcase style, so it's like quite big. And
yeah,
it's got, platform on either side for their feet. And then I gather what you do is you sort of, imagine almost like a Segway, but one wheel in the middle, and your feet go either side of it, and then
I know what it is.
no stick to brace yourself on. You just lean forwards to go. These things I think can do between 30 and 50 mile an hour.
That's bonkers.
They are quick. But completely illegal here, certainly on the public roads. But
One of these kind of things?
no,
hoverboard.
No,
Not a hoverboard.
No.
An actual you're talking about they actually sit on it like a unicycle.
no. You stand.
You stand on it. Oh, I've
stand.
seen those. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you stand either side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not one of these.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So something. Oh, it is a Segway thing then. So this is. I'm looking at something called a 9-bot.
Yeah.
Apparently, a maximum speed apparently of 15 miles per hour. I assume somebody will put a firmware on that. Update for that to go twice the speed. Yeah, it looks like a big wheel with little things on it.
Yeah, there's various versions of it, something like that. Yeah, I'm definitely not doing that. They do the electric scooter racing now, and that's quite hilarious to watch.
Yeah, that'd be good fun.
Yeah. Do you know what? You had an idea once. Do you remember? It was to get something really obscure, like a Defender, an old Defender, and then completely rebuild it so that it's like designed to run on the track or something stupid like that, and throw Zamani in it.
No. Track cars.
No, what you're talking about, this is the Rage Rover.
The Rage Rover, that was it.
I still sort of want to do that.
Yeah.
My idea was, it was based when this is a few months ago. Ant and I were testing the it's the L320 generation Range Rover Sport, which is the unlikeliest of all track things because it's got 2 chassis in it, so it weighs 2.5 tons. However, it does have a 5-litre supercharged V8, and it handles quite nicely. And I reckon you could probably pull half a ton out of it, because I reckon by the time you've gutted the interior, taken the air ride off, like all that sort of stuff, I reckon you can do lots of stuff to it, get it sat real nice and low, and just call it the Rage Rover, and just put like a pair of bucket seats in the front, some harnesses, and I think it would be the best thing to turn up to a track day in, because you'll just confuse everybody. And they actually handle they are like a big oversized Golf. Like, they're really fun to drive. I would just love, because I also like the idea. I've done track days in fast cars, and you know what? It just gets boring, because if you're not going fast, then as far as people are concerned, you're failing. Instead, I think you just turn up in something that's fun. And if you did that, everyone's going to be like,
Yep. And then we'd put our tamed racing driver, which happens to be my son Damani, in it, and send him out. And this reminds me of a track day that we did ages ago. We were shaking down the car after some updates, and we went to a track day at Brands Hatch. It was just a shakedown day. We weren't doing proper testing, and it was a VW Golf. It was actually a Mark 5 chassis, but with a Mark 6 front end on it, because basically they were essentially the same cars. And they did that because the Mark 5 chassis was just slightly better for various reasons based on testing. So they made it look like a Mark 6 for the purposes of competing in the Volkswagen Racing Cup. And they weren't particularly fast. They were regulated based on power and weight. So we went for the lightest option, which gave you the lowest power, which was like 260 horsepower. It wasn't particularly fast, but it was on a wider track with big flared touring car style wheel arches. I think the suspension came off a TTRS, if I'm not mistaken. So it just was wider, lower, stripped out, caged, all of that stuff with racing slicks on it. And he went out on track, and he was hustling a 700 and something horsepower R35 GTR around this track. And basically he was quicker than the guy into the braking zones, around the corners. Obviously that guy would then pull on the straights. Now what everyone was told is, look, if someone's clearly quicker than you, just let them pass. Even if you've got a more powerful car on the straights, they clearly have a quicker lap time, just let them pass. Anyway, Damani was like, on the straights, the guy would pull, he'd catch up to him in the corners, be right behind him, bumper to bumper, and then the guy would pull on the straights again. It was clearly faster than him. And we came back into the pits, and we went over to check out the cars. So what's going on with this car? And he said, "Oh, are you the guy that was in the Golf?" Bearing in mind at the time, Damani was, I think, 16, just about 17.
Oh no, beaten by a child.
Yeah. And and he was like, "Oh yeah," he says, "Oh yeah, I saw you behind me." I was like, "That was absolutely no way I was letting past a Golf. No way, I wasn't doing it." I was like, "Yeah, but you are supposed to. If someone's quicker than you at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, but there's no way I could allow that." And it's like people just get really funny about it when they're in a really fast car. What they forget is it might be fast because the engine's powerful, but if you're on slick if someone else is on slick tires and you're not, that person's going to be braking way later than you.
And there could be like a 700 or 800 kilo weight difference.
Oh, there was a huge weight difference. I think by the time you stripped everything out of that Golf, there was literally nothing left. Yeah. So it didn't weigh very much at all. So yeah, there was a big weight difference. And even though there was probably a huge power difference, it was the grip in the corners. So he could be on the brakes way later, carry more mid-corner speed, carry more exit speed. And this guy just made his car very, very wide. So I think that would be actually quite hilarious to see the looks on people's faces, because when we walked away from that conversation, we were chuckling away to ourselves about it.
I would love to see it. I also think, just talking not for a moment about the segments, but instead the show as a whole, I think, continuing on the theme of the Radiator Arms, that I think as opposed to presenting from a studio, we should present from a pub. But each week a different one, but as a way of featuring independently run, automotive friendly local hostelries throughout Britain. Yep. I think it's just a nice thing to do.
And there's so many now. You've got the Motorist, Caffeine and Machine, something and juice. Can't remember what it was called now.
Oh
It
yeah,
was there the other
gasoline
day.
and juice.
Gasoline and
Yeah.
juice. Gasoline juice, I think it's officially called. And so many others that are sort of popping up now. And I think it's great. I mean, it's just great to have places like that where you can just go and know that you're going to be welcomed and not scoffed and scowled at and presumed that you're going to leave with leaving 11s on the road.
Yeah, I also would actually quite like to do a segment inspired, hear me out here, by the Teletubbies, where we get a young or new influencer to send us their segment they've created, which can be like, look, you get 2 minutes of fame, right? You can send in your piece, and if we like it, we will broadcast it to the nation as a way of, giving young people a little platform. Because, again, let's say, nowadays people are, I think, just as interested in becoming presenters or celebrities or whatever as they are racing drivers or drifters or whatever. And I think that would be quite a cool thing to do. Just give people a little platform.
Being a YouTuber is like the number one ambition for young people at the moment. I think when I was growing up, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, oh, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a firefighter.
I just want to be on fire.
Yeah, firefighter. Now it's like, I want to be a YouTuber. Actually, I very, very brief digression on this. So my nephew, he wants to be a YouTuber.
Yeah.
He thinks I'm the coolest thing in the world. And he had said his teachers were asking him about his career aspirations, and he said, "Oh, he wants to be a YouTuber." And their response was, "Oh, well, yeah, but you can't really do anything with that. I mean, that's not really a career. I mean, how do you even make money doing that? No, you need to think about something that's gonna, get you a regular paycheck." And I was like, "Right, that's it." That's it. So we've got a plan. We've got a plan that we're going to put together, hopefully in the next couple of weeks before the term runs out, to strike up a conversation, inspire a conversation about what you can do with YouTube and the great opportunities it can create and the success stories that it can have.
We've also spoken about this separately on the channel before, that I think actually in a lot of ways doing YouTube is a really, really healthy and productive thing if done the right way, because to do YouTube requires learning a number of different skills, including presentation. And it's been acknowledged quite a few times of late that young people have issues with communication. They can have issues with assertiveness and things like that. So regularly practicing your presenting ability and that sort of stuff, I think is really, really good practice, because there are lots and lots of things that I think if you were to rephrase it and explain it to an older person, if you had to say to somebody, he's been out vlogging, they'll be like, oh, well, that's not much of a career. But if you say to them, he's practicing public speaking, they go, oh yeah, worthy talent, yeah. And the same if you go like, well, he's practicing photography skills, composition, technique, exposure, learning about the history of art, because that's what you might not like it, you might not see it as art, but a lot of social media is. And like all art forms, it comes with its own history. And what's actually really quite nice about it is because it's a very short history in which it has evolved a lot. I, as a former cinematographer, I could do a whole lecture on, say, looking at a YouTube video from 10, 15 years ago, which invariably would have been filmed with, just a GoPro on the end of your arm type thing. And then a look at, let's say, either something from someone like Sam over at Seen Through Glass, or maybe one of the Haggerty channels and something like that, which is super high production values, television-like production values, and talking about how you get from the one state of affairs to the other. There are lessons in economics. Why is it that most YouTube channels don't make stuff like TV? Because you have to understand the cost of doing things, the people that are involved. You also have to learn about really important stuff like rights and clearances. You know, no, you can't just go and put Taylor Swift on your video. It's not going to work, you know, or she's going to make money out of it and you're not going to. You know, there's so much that doing YouTube can teach you, from, you know, working out how to title a video, you know, thumbnails, editing, everything. And even if the channel crashes and burns, even if the channel goes absolutely nowhere, there are valuable skills that maybe you will transfer to another career, you know, and maybe will be of use somewhere else. And just in case you are listening and you're young and you think you're getting YouTube, or more likely, if you've got somebody that you know who is young, that is thinking of getting into social media, be it YouTube, TikTok, or whatever, the advice that I would give is really, really simple, which is they'll often concentrate on trying to be a YouTuber. But the fact is that YouTuber is a weird, amorphous thing that's hard to pin down. So to use our specific example, you know, we are car enthusiasts. So the thing we like, the thing we love, the thing that we're passionate about is cars. We have other hobbies as well, and we'll talk about those a bit more on other episodes. But taking cars, the car's actually the thread. The car's the interesting bit. The YouTube is almost the side bit. Like, the YouTube is how you're making something out of that passion. And your passion can be anything. It can be cars. It can be motorbikes. It can be classical music. It can be films. It can be obscure literature. You know, it can be Dungeons and Dragons. It can be plumbing. It can be carpets of the world. Like, it doesn't actually matter. What you need is a subject that interests you, excites you, and you are passionate about. And that is what you turn into your career. And that's the way I think to do it.
Yeah, I think I was just looking up on my phone to remind myself of the title of the video. So Your Child Wants to Be a YouTuber appears on this very channel on JayEmm and Friends. It's not that long, and we run through a bunch of different things that you have to be aware of, and actually some of the ways in which, as a parent, you can look out for their well-being and safeguard your kids, as well as encouraging and supporting them in exploring and developing all of the skills that go around actually making content. But I think there's a good bit there for, I'd like to create the opportunity to showcase like up and coming YouTubers who could do with a bit of a break. That would be really good. I like the idea of that. I also wonder if there's like something for, you know, YouTubers, them like well-known YouTubers in the car space to come on and do something. And I wouldn't call it, you know, a YouTube star in a reasonably priced car or anything. But it could be something along the lines of, I don't know, YouTuber challenge, or some sort of YouTuber challenge where we get maybe a couple on and get them to do some challenge against each other.
A fight to the death.
Yeah, that I was thinking death race, actually.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Or maybe can they even drive? That would be an interesting one.
Exactly.
Actually, there was a video the other day. I think Matt Armstrong put it together, and they went to, was it Donington Park, and got a bunch of different YouTubers to set hot laps. I know that Shmee was there. I believe Mark McCann was there.
Oh, yeah, no, they did. Yeah.
And some other guys were there whose names escape me. Sorry, guys.
I can't remember the name of the event, but yeah, I'm aware of the one that you're talking about. And actually, this is the thing, because actually some of the YouTubers that you might know, perhaps you wouldn't even see them particularly driving in any exceptional way, but then it turns out they're really quick on track. And then the ones that maybe, you know, do drive a little bit spiritedly end up being not so quick on track. So it's kind of interesting to see, you know, who can really drive. That'd be, or some sort of timed lap type thing would be quite cool.
I would quite like to do for my own selfish benefit, because, you know, track driving is something I've done plenty of track driving, but I'm not a good track driver. I'm pretty poor. I would quite like to do a lap challenge where we could maybe have, you know, our tame Stig go out and set he can do a one hot lap in a car that maybe he's never driven. And over the course of the series, I want to see if I can actually match the lap. Like, can I beat it? Like, because people don't understand, unless you've been near them, you're like, race drivers are built differently. Like, they do not operate like normal human beings do. Like, if you've been in a car with a race driver, it's just, like, you have to have faith in them. Right? Like, I've done it a few times, including in cars with slicks and wings. And if you've not been in something with slicks and wings, like, your brain does not comprehend what these cars are capable of. And I've had it on a few occasions. I remember doing a track day a long time ago at Brands Hatch. I was in my supercharged M3, which was on pretty decent road tires, right? And that was a deliberate choice because the thing is, you get them up to temperature pretty quick. They're pretty good in all conditions. So for a novice like myself, they work very, very well. You know, the issue with slicks is if they're not hot, they're lethal, you know. And somebody was there in I believe it was a Seat Ibiza or a Seat Leon. Basically, it looked a bit like a touring car. I don't think it was actually a touring car, but it was on slicks. And
That might be a TCR car.
Yeah, I remember blasting past them and sort of leaving them for dust. And then about like a lap later, this thing just appeared in my rearview mirror and then just went straight past me on a bend like I was going nowhere. And it's like, I followed them. I was like, yeah, I'm not following them into that braking zone. You're like, those tires are up to temperature now, aren't they? And it's just like, it's like a cheat code. It's like someone's put super glue on the tires.
I've got a segment.
Go for it.
It's wrong, but oh so right.
Oh.
And this is about cars that break all the rules and do things differently, but somehow they worked. An obvious example for me would be something like the Renault Clio V6, right? You know, rear mid-mounted engine in a hatchback. Just wrong, but oh so right. That's an example. Also, the K12 Micra that I got passenger lap in the other day that has a 350Z engine in the back, much like the V6. And if you want that, that is on Sports and Touring. It's actually a very interesting car. It's been around for years. It started out having a British Touring Car Championship engine from RML in it.
Wow.
But then they realised that was a bit too much of a pain to run. So they took that out and put in 350Z 3.5 litre V6 instead. But, you know, cars like that, you know, finding those cars that were just wrong, but oh so right.
I feel like I've got two segment ideas. One, I'd like to see you, Ant, doing some real hard consumer kind of like advice and motoring things. I feel like that'd be really good from you. You're very good at delivering that kind of stuff. Like when you did the carbon fiber video, for instance, you know, that was really well done. I'd like to see you doing some of that. But I'd also like to do, you're talking about cars that are oh so wrong, but oh so right. I'd like to try and do a series of ridiculous mods and engine swaps that you think shouldn't work, but trying to make them work. Trying to do it with like some really like high-tech fabricators and garages and things like people who know what they're doing. You know, trying to engine swap like, you know, making a Honda Civic rear-wheel drive. For those who've watched the Jimmy Oak channel, I know exactly what I'm on about. You know, things like that. He in fact he did that with like I think it was Nissan S13 suspension and stuff like that, and turned a Honda Civic into a drift car. Things like that.
Brilliant, love it.
That would be kind of something I'd like to do.
There's a Mini, I think it was a R56 Mini that someone's done that too, and they've turned it into a drift car as well. Yeah, I like it.
Actually, I know what you'd like, Will, is I saw ages ago, my friend Michael sent me a link to it. Somebody took an old VW camper and put a 911 engine in the back and basically stripped it and caged it.
Oh, that. Did I ever tell you the story of my friend? I'm not going to say his name.
Anonymous.
My anonymous friend. We were flatmates when I was much, much younger. And he had just bought this Audi. Gosh, which one was it? It was the Quattro something. It was the sort of like fastback, but very boxy.
Yeah. It was the original Quattro.
80.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this was many years ago. I was very young. Anyway, and he thought it was just so cool. Obviously, everyone was like, raving about the cars at the time. And I don't think it was even the top of the line one. It was like the one down from that. But in those, it was something like a 2 litre or something like that.
Yeah.
But in those days, right, 2
was a
litre
lot.
was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
huge engine. Like a 2 litre back in the early 90s was like the equivalent of a 3.5, 4 litre today.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he got this car, and I remember we pulled up to the lights, and he was just like, "Yeah, this car's fast. I'm going to show you as soon as the lights turn green." He was like revving it, and just as that happened, an old camper van pulled up, and he was like, "Whatever," and then literally just as the light went green, all we heard was this loud V8 going, yeah, and then this thing just shot off. The rear tires were like, how wide is that? That's like about 2 feet wide.
Yeah.
The rear tires were about 2 feet
Like
wide.
Hoosier drag
yeah,
radials,
proper.
yeah.
And it had this like massive like exhaust pipe sticking out of the back of it. Just dropped him at the lights. But the thing is, when they pulled up, all we could see was the front of the camper van. And it just looked like this kind of rusty old VW camper van. And it was just the most hilarious thing. And afterwards, I just looked at him and he went, "Don't say anything. Don't say anything," and I was just laughing.
You could
my
hear
head
his ego shattering into pieces.
Honestly, I think his manhood was shrinking at that moment.
Mind you, I've won a few races against Ferraris in my Golf. They didn't know they were racing at the time.
I was going to say, I recall years back, I went on one of these top speed events. I was in my Evora. And I believe the quoted top speed of the Evora was something like 183 or thereabouts, which seemed plausible. I got it over a standing mile to 172, which I'd have been more impressed with had there not been somebody that did 174 in a Mercedes W124 diesel.
No.
Yep, a diesel. But the best bit of the day was there was a lady turned up in a Merc, I believe GL, whatever the big one is, right? With her kid in the passenger seat, who must have been about 6 if he was a day, right? Looking like they'd got lost on the school run. And they were doing runs where they were sending people off in pairs. And there was this chap in this heavily modified Evo, pulls up next to the lady on the school run. And the Evo sat there going, proper Fast and Furious, right? And the lady at the front's there like, okay, yeah, 3, 2, 1, go. And this Merc just goes, and it's gone. It just pissed off into the distance. And this guy's there in the Evo making all the noises and everything. And it's like, no, she was just pulling away like it wasn't even fair.
Right, there we go. Sleepers. Right, we've got to have a section on sleepers, like the ultimate sleepers or something like that, and people can maybe we can get people to bring their cars or something.
Yeah, I mean Drag Race Showdown.
Yeah,
but I think that's the
or no, sleepers versus supercars.
No, I like that. I like this. Okay, so I hate to tell you this. Not so much this, but this is almost a series. It's called Fastest Car, and it's on Netflix. I think they only did 2 of them.
Yeah,
and what they did was
Hartford.
They got people that had basically built their own cars, and they then put them up against just a very, very fast but factory standard car. I really liked it because you also got to know the people in it, some of whom had really interesting stories. And, because to me, ultimately, I think it is the people that that connect each other. Tell you what I would love to do. I would love to see, I'm going to call this segment, right, I've just thought of it. I'm going to call it First and Last.
Okay.
Right? And what it is, tissues at the ready, boys. It's going to be a segment in which we get old people who are giving up driving and we pair them with young people they're going to give their cars to.
Aww.
Yeah, I think it's nice because you get old people who are like, look, the time has come to hang up the badge and the gun, and do that. But they want to then, pass on the torch. So we get elderly petrolheads basically who are like, right, that's it, I'm done, and they want to get young people into it because there is a scheme out there whose exact name escapes me, But what it does is it's for young people, and you can effectively have a classic car for nothing. Like, there are people out there that own these classic cars that would like to see them used. So what they do is they've worked out a way to basically get young people to effectively take over the running of these cars, so the cars get used.
I think Hubnut did a video on that or something like that.
I believe he did, yeah.
And they get
Very
to,
Hubnut fodder.
It is. They get to like borrow it, I think, or use it for a year or something like that, and then somebody else gets a chance to use it. You know, so people get to experience the cars.
Yeah, I think it's really, really good.
Yep. I'm liking the sound of that very much.
I'd also like to see with the old people, maybe before they give up, maybe them getting a chance to drive maybe one of their first cars, if there's an example out there, something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, somebody
Well,
like...
my granddad's first car was a standard 10, but I'm not sure there are many of those left.
Well, I mean, there might be one somewhere. You never know.
It probably is.
Yeah, do you know what? The first car idea is quite a nice one. Going on the, you know, kind of slightly emotional side. Yeah, maybe if there are like people who could write in where they've got like an interesting story, maybe the person's gone through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a car in their past that they always, you know, wish they could have kept. And their first car, and we basically find one and restore it. And
Because I think, again, I'm really passionate about, you know, trying to get people into driving and finding a first car. You know, I think that's a really, and it's one of these things as well. I think that you never believe it when you're that young person, but eventually you do. That whatever it is, it doesn't matter how much of a heap it is, that first car will always be special. Like, it will always be something you'll have a connection with. You know, I mean, I don't know how it was for you guys, but I remember as soon as I got my license, I mean, I was driving anywhere and everywhere for no reason whatsoever. You know, it's just, you just got to find things to do and go to places, which is why I'm really, you know, glad that the age of social media has enabled sort of a lot more meets and things to happen, because, you know, it's giving people places, you know, to go, excuses to go there, and reasons to socialize, you know, in person.
So on the subject of those first cars, I want to get myself into a Rover 418 diesel just for a drive, you know, just to have a go, to see if my memories of 17-year-old Will driving his first ever car are as correct as they were. So, an R8 basically, it was a 1994. So, if anybody out there happens to have an R8 418D, send us an email to landlord@theradiatorarms.com. We'd love to selfishly feature it.
so you've owned an R8 as well.
I have, yes.
There you go.
Just a very different kind.
I'd love to find a sleeper R8 Rover versus a stock R8.
I tell you what I want to build. I really have wanted for years to build a track Ford Scorpio. Just because it's ridiculous. It's just one of those cars where I look at it and think, that's so like boaty and Sunni, and they're rear wheel drive, obviously. Let's just.
Or a Probe.
Oh, absolutely.
There was a Probe that was parked at a particular place that I worked on a regular basis that they'd done an EV conversion on.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was actually really interesting. And they have these enthusiast days, and they sort of had the bonnet open. You could see all of the electric gubbins, but yeah, been completely gutted and built as an EV, just as a personal project.
It's another thing I'd love to do. I love the segment. Will builds an EV. Will he set the house on fire, or will it work?
I'm thinking Electro Boom. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Oh, I've seen Electro Boom. Yeah.
For anyone who's listening who doesn't know Electro Boom, he's like one of the OG YouTubers that he used to do these what appeared to be instructional videos on how to build things with electronics, and in every episode he would end up electrocuting himself or starting a fire.
Yeah.
No. The OG is photonic induction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, do you remember him?
No,
he was
no.
the guy that threw the brick into the washing machine, and then there was the big video of it going viral of the washing machine going everywhere. Yeah,
No.
there'll be some people out there going, "Oh, I know that guy."
Or will
Yeah.
it's blend.
Oh,
come on.
Blend. Wow.
And that's got to be a set. We got to. Well, I think it's worth making up something for that, just to be able to say, like, not will it blend, but will it
Yeah.
yeah.
will it bend? Will's got to take this car he's just built around the track.
Exactly.
Will it bend?
How about James tries? I would like a segment in which because you talked previously about getting me on the tools or this.
Yeah,
that,
you
and the
got
other.
he got away from having to service the Maestro because do you know what? Here's something I actually want to say here. I think the whole reason that James bought me a Mercedes is because he knew I'd sell the Maestro and therefore he wouldn't have to change the oil on it.
No, but I would like to maybe do a challenge of I would like to try and paint a car or do something like that. And then the mission being we've got, one done by the professional that knows what they're doing and then another by me. And the aim is to hopefully make them indistinguishable, which is somewhat unlikely. Also, you mentioned earlier, you got me thinking, there are certain cars out there that are sort of, I think, born to disappoint just because they happen to have got a similar name to something much, much better known. For example, the Nissan Skyline. You say that and somebody will conjure up in their head the idea of an R34 V-Spec 2 Nur, whereas it could actually be a really ordinary cooking saloon car from the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
Anybody says R32 and I tend to think GTR, but very often they might mean Golf, which is also a cool car.
We saw one of those the other day, Damani and I, and he was like, look, an R32. And I was looking, I couldn't see it. We were driving along. I couldn't, I was literally that person looking for a Skyline. And I was like, where? He said, it was right, the silver one. I went, oh, the Golf, the R32 Golf. Oh, that was not the first thing that came to my mind.
I also got so disappointed because I was talking to a friend, Vlad, who had the XE she drove. And he was talking about his 500e, and I was like, "You've got a 500e? Like, the hell did this happen? Like, I'm getting in the car. I'm coming to Scotland now. I want to drive the 500e." He's like, "You've driven it?" I was like, "Oh, I'd remember driving a Mercedes 500e. Thank you very much." He's like, "No, the Fiat 500 electric," and I was like, "Oh no, come on!"
Can you imagine if he was like, "Yeah, fine. If you want to come up," and you got all the way there, and you're like, "Oh, that's not what I thought you meant," and that would have been a really awkward moment.
All right, so we've talked a fair bit about some of the segments that we might do. Okay, I would like to know, gentlemen, from yourselves, which people would you like our producers to get in touch with, either as potential co-hosts or as guests?
I quite fancy the idea of us presenting it. I think we would be. I think we would do a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think another few thousand of these podcasts. I think we'll get there.
Oh, it's one of the, are we talking just other YouTubers, celebrities, anybody?
Anyone. Although if it's your Aunt Doris, most people might not know who you're talking about. So
Actually, I would like to see my mum driving a car around a track.
Well, my mum listens, and she's great. Actually, many moons ago, we went over to Germany. Mum and I used to try and have a trip away, like every other year or so. And bless her, she would not just indulge my hobby, but actually be quite supportive of going to different racetracks and things. We didn't tend to watch races, but I just like, sort of ticking off the list of like, yes, I've been here and I've been here and, been to various different places. Which is a petrolhead thing is quite, I tell you, this is really fascinating, right? We were in Florida one time because she wanted to go to the States, hadn't been to the States in decades. But she also liked doing the racetrack bit. So long story short, we wound up going and doing the Daytona 500. And we then traveled around Florida for a little bit. And I was curious because I was like, Florida isn't really well known for its tracks. Now, there is one down in Miami, which I've been around. Actually, I got driven around it very slowly in a Carrera GT, which is quite an experience. And also much quicker in a KTM Crossbow. But Daytona is probably the best known to many people, but it's your classic American tri-oval type affair. I still think an iconic track, and I know European people will take the piss out of it. But we were traveling from kind of the west of Florida down to Miami, and I was looking at various things, and I realized on our way, we were going to be going within spitting distance of Sebring,
Ooh.
which is quite a well-known track, and has the other Sebring 12 hours and this, that, and the other. We had this convertible Corvette, right, that we'd rented. And so I was like, Mum, do you mind? It's going to add like 20 minutes to our journey, but, you know, I've played Sebring in Forza so many times. Like, I would like to just go and see it. And Sebring's quite famous because there's a section of the track, if you've ever played it in a video game, it's the one which has a bit that's incredibly bumpy, and you can't possibly imagine that a racetrack is like that. But no, it's really like that because it's like a lot of tracks. It was at one point an airfield, and it's now become a bit of the signature of the track. So we got there, and the gate at the front is open. And we're like, okay, interesting. And there was clearly something going round. Okay, well, you know what? Let's take our chances. We'll pull the we're British and on holiday card. Let's drive in basically as far as we can get until somebody tells us to go away. All right? So we're driving in. Noises are getting louder and louder. I'm like, whatever's on that track, I thought maybe it was a motorbikes or something like that. Anyway, we then find this man with sat on a little plastic chair with a clipboard. And if you're trying to get into a track, he's basically the final boss. You know, you're like, 'cause he is there to say no. So we drive in, and the guy's there with his clipboard. Roll the window down. He says, oh, you know, who are you guys with or whatever? I said, look, we're not with anybody. We're here on holiday, and I just wanted to come see the track. And he said, oh, okay, that's cool. He said, look, you can't really come past like this bit, but you can watch whatever you like from basically anywhere else that you like. Okay, cool. So we went and parked. We saw a couple of photographers standing by the track. So I was like, well, they've clearly know where a good view is, so we'll go and park up next to them and have a look. We go and pull up, get out the car. It's an IndyCar test day.
Oh, wow. How cool is that?
Yeah. And I said to the photographers, I was like, what's going on? They're like, yeah, it's IndyCar preseason testing. They're like, that's last year's champion, just gone past. And it's like, could you imagine just like rocking up to Snetterton or somewhere, and it's the Formula One preseason test, and the gates are open, and you can just walk in? Like, it was unbelievable.
I love that.
I couldn't get over it. It was so cool.
I was at Silverstone once. We were doing something, me and Damani. What was it? I can't remember now. Oh, it was a young person's driver experience thing. It was before he did the Ginetta Junior Scholarship challenge, and he'd never driven a car before. And I thought, well, we should at least get him, you know, in a car of some description.
Is this like the basic inner Corsa, go forwards, backwards type thing?
No, they did a little bit more than that. They had like a section of the old circuit that went under the bridge that they kind of drive down. And
I did that at Brands when I was like 16 or so,
Yeah, so he was 15 at the time. But we happened to be there, and then we heard some noises going on the track, and we just went off for a walk, and there were a couple of Red Bulls going around.
Nice.
That was pretty bonkers. But yeah, I don't think we were supposed to be exactly where we were, but no one stopped us from going there.
Yeah.
And the grandstand wasn't locked, so
I think that's fair. But yeah, Mum and I went to Germany one time in her 911. And I'd said to her, I was like, do you want to go on the Autobahn? She didn't really like going too fast in corners, but on the straights, she's all right with it. And I said to her, like, do you want to go? She said, no. It's like, okay. And then when we got home, she's like, oh, yeah, my one regret is I didn't actually have a go on the Autobahn. I was like, oh, come on. So a couple of years later, we went back out, and this time it was in my Z4M coupe. As I said, I was like, Mum, do you want to go on the Autobahn? You know, like, there is no speed limit here. As long as you're driving safely and sensibly, you can go as fast as you like. And she's like, oh, okay. So, you know, it was a nice day. Traffic was actually pretty light. We switched over, put her in the driver's seat. We headed out, and I was like, look, just ignore the speedo, because it doesn't matter. You know, if there's a speed limit, I will tell you, but there's not. she did about 127.
Oh, excellent.
I say, well done, Mum.
That's good.
right. New segment.
Just
called Your Mum.
Your mother.
Where we take people's mums who are not known for their, you know, necessary driving skill. We train them up secretly, and then we pit them against their younger car enthusiasts' children.
You know what? We couldn't get away with it for very long, but I love the idea that we can get, somebody to sort of thinking they're bringing their mum onto the show for her first track experience, not knowing that she's basically spent the last week going around with Damani.
Yeah.
And can now set a shit hot lap.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I think it would be even better if we kind of pranked people with things like actually drifting as well. Like, like get them.
my mum to do a drift.
Yep, honestly. Well, do you know what? We did this drift day at Alton Park. It was great fun. The track there is set up for that sort of thing. And I think it's the kind of thing where you could set it up in a way where they're going to, go to an event at the track or something that's somehow involving us. And the mum takes a wrong turn.
Yeah.
Into the drift track. And I was like, oh, what am I doing here? Oh, that would be great.
Actually,
Mums, dads, granddads, you name it. Whoever isn't a proper driver.
A chap that we will get on the podcast at some point, a lovely guy I know called Rich Duesberg. I've done a few videos with him, and in one of them he did tell me about how he got a rental car and managed to do, I think, 2 or 3 laps of Zandvoort. I'm sure it was Zandvoort. Basically, because there was a gate they'd left open and he just drove around until somebody told him to go away.
That's kind of dangerous, though. There was, do you remember years ago, the Brands Hatch incident where this...
yeah, but there was a race was going on.
There was a race going on, yeah.
This was very clearly nothing is going on this day.
Was that the one that was on YouTube with the young lad and his girlfriend drove onto the track? Yeah, I remember that. That was like hugely viral, that wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. I know the guy that was commentating trackside that day, and he told me a bit more about what happened. It was just outrageous.
Did the guy get like in big trouble for it?
Yeah, he got arrested. I can't remember exactly what the charge
public
was.
endangerment or something.
Something like that. Yeah, something
being
along those
a
lines.
dick.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of guests, now I want to make it a little bit more interesting. What like public figures that aren't even alive anymore? If we could magic them back to life, who would you have as a guest?
I don't know. Churchill. We'll fight them on the beaches. We'll fight them in the hills. Like, yeah, but how are you around a bend, mate? Come on.
I'd like to see Jimi Hendrix after he's done some Purple Haze going around the track.
Definitely not a performance-enhancing drug. Yeah, that would be quite cool. This is the problem. Is when people say to you, like, who would you like to see? And I'm like, yeah, I really like the sort of the connection between people. So like, I would love to get like older race drivers on, because again, like, they never stop being race drivers. I think there's always something interesting. Like, I would like to see people, particularly from sort of like the 70s, that kind of time, because in that. Cars in the 70s were still very, very wild, and I would love to see the old guys teaching new race drivers how to do it. I had a great experience a little while back, which I think was it Adrian Flux did it for me. Myself and Dad Cars Ben, we got taken round Goodwood as passengers in a few classic cars. There was like a pair of classic Minis. There was also an old Mustang race car. And I also went around with Alex Brundle, Martin Brundle's son, was doing laps in a GT40, proper race prepped GT40.
Nice.
And if you've not done anything like that, it's just unbelievable. But I found it really interesting because I was talking to him about it and saying, like, how did you get into this? Because he's raced modern cars and things. And I think he first got into it because he said he went and did this event where he was basically invited as like a guest driver. And of course, you're used to these modern, super fast cars and everything else. And so you're like, oh yeah, come on, these cars aren't even that quick. Like, it'd be easy, get in and drive it. And he's like, yeah, he got in this car and just got his ass handed to him. Because he's like, you almost have to unlearn everything that you know about driving modern cars because it doesn't apply. I think the way he said to me, like, the GT40 Hounders is like, it's basically like driving a Group C car, but where somebody's taken all the downforce out of it. Because the car doesn't really make downforce at all. Yeah. So the way you drive it is completely different. It's basically like being on a bar of soap. Like, when those things are quick, like, it feels like they've never really got grip because you're just moving around all the time. Wonderful, wonderful cars. So yeah, I'd love to see some, old school guys. Jackie Stewart is always an interesting
Didn't
person.
he do something with James May similar to that on Top Gear?
He did. There was a really good series, very, very short-lived, where they had a few sort of, celebrities that like cars partner up with people. And the one episode I always remember was really quite unfortunate because I'm sure it was Chris Hoy, or Sir Chris Hoy, who was a very talented wheelman himself, did a bit with Colin McRae. But it wound up not being shown, I think, for a couple of years because between filming and release, McRae died. And with the circumstances of his passing, they kind of just like pushed it back a bit. So that would, that would be. I would like to get anybody that has played a racing driver in a movie on.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, especially Sylvester Stallone, because he's got a lot to answer for.
Oh gosh, that film. What was it?
Driven.
Driven. That was it.
I haven't seen that. Is it a good film or is it a bad film?
It's a terrible film. I want to rewatch it because I think now I might appreciate it as a comedy as opposed to the dead straight film it's trying to be.
I was going to say some films that are meant to be serious that end up being terrible are actually good watches. For instance, this actually it's slightly off topic, but I think this may ruffle some feathers. I think The Shining is a comedy, personally. I find that film hilarious.
I don't think it's a very good film. It's a very controversial opinion. I think it's a terrible film.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Ron Howard would be quite good. I mean, because he actually was on Top Gear, I believe, because he obviously directed Rush. There's not enough good racing movies. I'm looking forward to the F1 movie. We were talking about earlier because at the time of recording, it's not been released to the public.
I was a little bit worried about that though, because as you just mentioned, Driven, the whole sort of older racing driver coming back to show the young and how it's done type premise was kind of what the Stallone movie was, and then seeing Brad Pitt being the older guy that comes along to show the young
or something now.
Yeah,
and I worked out because this was one of my quiz questions I did a while back. I think he is like 17 years older than the actual last Formula One world champion. I didn't look up who's the oldest person to win a Formula One race, but it can't be definitely not over 50. That's for sure. Probably somewhere in their 40s.
Yeah, it's just it's not realistic. I mean, he does look very, very trim. He did train quite hard for the movie.
Yeah.
But I just thought that I was worried about the old guy coming back to show the young and how it's done type of thing.
We all saw the Mike Tyson fight. That was not.
Yeah,
that was not pretty.
No, and most people, and I think the vast majority of audiences will probably accept it because they don't understand how physical driving those cars is. I can't even comprehend how physical it is, but I've got the vaguest idea that when you are driving something quick, like a proper race go-kart, for example, not the rental ones that you get, and even those are tiring, but the actual sort of lightweight, sticky tire race carts, they're exhausting, absolutely exhausting. You come away, your neck's sore, everything, your whole body's aching. There was one point in time I couldn't even lift my arms. I had to sort of wait half an hour after driving one of those for the first time. And that puts into perspective how then much more stressful and incredible the F1 cars are. The go-kart that I drove, I think if you're pushing it, can pull about 3.5 Gs in a corner. And then you're thinking about Formula One cars that are pulling like 4.5 to 5 Gs in a corner, 6 under braking. It's like it's a whole different ball game. You have to be an athlete.
Their neck muscles are incredible.
Yeah,
it's mad. They do loads of exercises and things, don't they? It's just like, Formula One drivers, no, they are nutters.
Yeah, I throw my neck out if I look the wrong way, just getting out of bed.
So I think the majority of the public will accept it because they don't realise how physical it is and how, no matter how fit you are into your older years, there's only so much, you can do in terms of achieving that level of fitness. But nonetheless, I'm still looking forward to it because Lewis Hamilton played a big part in it. And, he was saying the other day about how he was warned, look, just remember, we've tried to make this as realistic as we can, but this is Hollywood and we've got to balance it with pure entertainment. So hopefully they'll strike the balance.
Yeah, that would be nice. I would love to team up with, say, Jason from Engineering Explained.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a great
for
channel.
technical stuff. I think he's a
Yeah.
really, really good guy. Does a very, very good job of explaining that sort of stuff. Kind of partly inspired by the revived series of Robot Wars as well. I really like seeing sort of like, behind the scenes type thing. With racing stuff. Like, to me, like what goes on in the pits is almost as interesting, if not more so, than what goes on the track.
I'd like to do like a Red Dwarf cast challenge where they have to race each other. but we get to pick what cars that they're in based on their old Red Dwarf characters. I'm sure they'd love that. Actually, there's a new season.
Well, one of them's only going to drive an electric car, so
Fine, that's fine.
Well, spin his nipple nuts and send him to Alaska. He really won't be going out in anything with petrol.
no lumpy cameo Buick for him.
Probably wouldn't even come anywhere near the show because of that, to be honest.
No. Anyway, if you've got some ideas what you'd like to see in the Radiator Arms live, not that sadly it's likely ever to happen, please do let us know. As ever, our email address is landlord@theradiatorarms.com. And we want to thank all of you for listening. Don't forget, we are always here on YouTube first at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning, followed then a week later on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and various other different ways of listening to us. And regardless of whether you've been watching us or listening, we want to say a big thank you from all of us here at the Radiator Arms. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.